Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to FNAF theorist ID's Fantasy for giving me the inspiration for this theory. Today, Fantasy released her version of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, covering all 9 mainline games so far, as well as some side material in the form of books, most of which I haven't read, but I do know enough about them to understand where she's coming from. I don't fully agree with her theory, but I do admit it was well made and managed to put a lot together well. That said, one thing I keep hearing in regards to the timeline of the newer FNAF games is the idea of whether the Landmark Freddy is possessed or not. And for those who say he is, the most common spirit he's associated with is Michael Afton, which Fantasy says she believes in her timeline explanation as well. There are other possibilities though, like Henry, Charlie, and the Crying Child, but for now I want to focus on what I think might have happened to Michael Afton. In FNAF 6, which I've recently played, and it's a great game, so I recommend you play it too. In the true ending, the building's vents burn, which puts at least parts of most of the spirits in the animatronics in those vents to rest, as Fantasy stated in her timeline. One spirit refuses to move on entirely, that being Cassidy, who tortures William Afton for his crimes in hell, which we see happen in Ultimate Custom Night, and Fantasy believes that Charlie, Elizabeth, and the Crying Child are also around as spirits after that point. What's commonly believed about FNAF 6 is that Michael is the player character and that he stays in the building to move on as well. But there's one small issue with that. There's a bunch of corporate-style cutscenes that play at the beginning of the game and after every ending except the neutral ending, which is the ending achieved by completing Saturday with less than 50 risk, a non-zero FAS rating, and at least one animatronic not salvaged. These are clearly directed at the player for comedic purposes, but the problem is, assuming Michael is the player character, after the true ending, if Michael does burn, who's being spoken to and presented as a completion certificate? Henry does say that there's an exit the player can take, but that he believes the player character wants to stay and burn along with him and the animatronics in the vent. I doubt the completion certificate would be handed to someone else on his behalf, and Michael probably knows that some of the spirits have unfinished business, and his father might come back, so he might want to take the exit anyways, just before he's able to burn to death, to accept the completion certificate and keep an eye out for his father. So in my opinion, either Michael isn't the player character or he did take the exit that was provided to him to keep an eye out for the spirit's unfinished business. Therefore, in my opinion, this precludes him from possessing Freddy. This makes Henry a more likely possibility, since he most likely did die in the fire, and the pizzaplex was built on top of that same pizzeria. The problem is, the way I see it, Henry put to rest all the spirits that wanted to rest, so his conscience should be relatively clear when he dies. Plus, I doubt the spirits that would want to stay need his help with their unfinished business, so it's likely not Henry either in my opinion. So is Charlie the spirit that possesses Freddy? Well, I'll have to admit something on this one and going forward as well. I'm not really sure. There's really no direct evidence that she is, even counting the fact that her name can be found in the names of the files for the post-it note room. I think that this room is more so evidence that Charlie's spirit is still around somehow, but I don't think she's haunting Freddy. She may be haunting the post-it notes themselves, giving a strange message to Gregory or to another spirit in the pizzaplex. The notes do contain all sorts of strange patterns, including a binary message that says, "Why is I?" like those 8 characters in UTF-8 or ASCII. And sure, Freddy isn't able to enter this room, or maybe he is if you backtrack, and I haven't tried that. So this doesn't seem to be trying to tell Freddy who he might really be. It might be meant for Gregory, as a long-standing theory is that Gregory is a robot possessed by the Crying Child. Now, I don't remember what exactly Fantasy said about Gregory being possessed. She did say that the original Gregory was dead, and this Gregory is a robot replacement. While I'm pretty neutral on the idea that Gregory might be a robot, I'm not sure he'd even be possessed in the first place if he was, other than maybe by his dead self that Fantasy suggests in her video. Freddy does have some voice lines that might suggest he's possessed, like I am not me. But Gregory doesn't have any such voice lines, and his personality seems to be pretty much consistent across the entire game. If Freddy isn't possessed, then that just means he's following his programming, plus any viruses such as Fliptrap that may have been downloaded into him. And honestly, the convincing evidence to me that he is possessed is when he says, I am not me, and that he found himself when clearing the path. This most likely just means the I am not me line, that he was being taken over by Afton when getting close to the boss room and he was under Vanny's control, who is possessed by Cliptrap, so that's why he was clearing the path in the first place. So finding himself might just mean that he was able to snap out of Cliptrap's control, or it could mean, again, I said I'm not sure on all this, that he found the body of who might be possessing him. Thing is, though, like I said, I don't think Michael died there. I don't think Henry's spirit is still around, and I don't think Charlie's spirit is specifically down there. That just leaves the crying child as the one most likely to be possessing Freddy, but the crying child is, or at least was, possessing Fredbear, and I just don't think Fredbear would be down there. All that said, I don't think Glamrock Freddy is haunted, but I could be wrong. Like the last few times, this isn't a situation where it's easy to apply Occam's razor, and I'm glad that people are out there trying to make sense of the mess of the story that Security Breach left behind. As I've said before, I love the game, but that's mostly because of the gameplay and interesting character designs and personality. The story is a whole other heap of shit that it's really hard to figure out, especially in the context of 8 other games before it. But it's good to see people like ID's Fantasy try to break all this down, and I highly suggest that you check her out, as her content is way better than mine, even if I disagree with her placement of certain events in the timeline. I'll be leaving her video on the end screen so you can check it out. So anyway, if you liked the video, be sure to press the like button below. If you really like the video, press the subscribe button. And if you want to know every time I upload, click the bell icon to enable all notifications. Until you next see me, stay safe and stay cool.